Today we will be setting up our first relay network. Yes, a small, short-term relay network that will hopefully be consisting of these small satellites, which are really tiny, but they're enough for the first phase. And as a bonus, at the end of the episode, I'm going to show you how to launch this bad boy without using any propellant whatsoever. First off, I would like to point out one of my frequent commenters, thank you very much, suggested that I should use the KSP Relay Network Calculator. It's a handy tool for calculating the relay networks. Thank you very much for providing the tool. I will put a link to the GitLab in the comment below. And the only thing that I would actually suggest where this could be improved, that we could add the antenna config ourselves, because I currently don't have Communitron 32s but 16s, and that will play a little bit role further in the video. Without further announcing, you're gonna see. But okay, let's just go and address the elephant in the room. We're gonna take the probes and we're gonna build a small satellite. Also, one feedback to you guys, you were asking why do I have constantly local control. I was actually searching and I thought that I had cheats enabled for the RemoteTech unknowingly, but I have identified that the problem lies with the SETI RemoteTech config, and this episode still has this in. However, starting next episode, I have removed the SETI relay config and SETI probe controller, so hopefully RemoteTech will be going back to its roots, where actually you have signal delay, you don't have local control, everything is happening with a delay, because that's the way how I like to play it. The only downside that I do regret of removing the SETI control is that we will no longer have multiple ground bases, but then again, it's something that I'll just have to deal with. If that bothers you, do let me know in the comments below, should I be taking down this relay network that I've placed using these. Could be thought as cheats, but I was unknowingly, but okay. If that's the main consensus, then I'm going to remove the relay network and replant it all over again using the traditional methods. But for the time being, I'd like to think just to keep it as is and remove it and continue onwards. Let me know in the comments what your thoughts are. I would really like your comments, actually are great value to me, and I would really like if you would put it. Anyway, we have built this small relay. It has a relay antenna and it's Communitron 16 because Communitron 32 is not yet available to me, which I thought wouldn't be such big of a deal given the altitude that I was gonna place as suggested by the tool, and that's 810 0.81 megameters. So we're gonna see. Now, the next step is actually building the satellite deployer. And the satellite deployer is gonna have 4 of these attached radially. I was thinking to do, you know, like a small, launcher that would be opening up, but I really believe it's better to have a launcher that is launching all of them in one go, because then they can be spaced out properly. Right, so having said that, this is the launcher, and it will have also a probe core on its own, and it will have these 4 satellites attached. You might say, okay, why 4? I mean, there were 3. I always include 1 extra for redundancy, and if it works, if all of the 3 work perfectly, because I have had cases where I, for example, forgot to extend the antenna and all of a sudden the small satellite ain't working. Well, that one is useless, so that means I always bring 1 extra when I'm setting up RemoteTech networks as a redundancy. And if all 3 work, then I plan to put this into high inclination to cover a little bit area over the poles and act like a backup relay in case something goes awry. So that's kind of my thought process, because I'm trying to build a network that is semi-redundant. So you could build a perfectly looking network, perfectly aligned and everything, but then again, an issue happens, things get occluded and whatnot, and my thought is, you know, let's make it a little bit more redundant, because I plan to rely on probes heavily for the initial phase of exploration. So I've put in once again the SAS unit, then we're gonna be putting the small, I was thinking the small upper stage, let's see, something like this, and then placing the smaller engine, like, you know, what's it called? Not the Terrier, what's the name of the engine? I believe it's Poodle, yes, Poodle. But then I thought about it. If I looked at the delta V, this looked like a bit of an overkill, if you ask me, because the top stage has plenty of delta V inside, so having another part of the top stage actually feels like an unnecessary complication. So I placed the octopus engine at the bottom, and then I thought, hold on, if I get rid of this, will that suffice? 7 point something thousand. I think that's more than enough, to be honest. So really no need for any extra. So we're gonna be just placing the fins at the bottom, and after that we're gonna be constructing the launch pad, launch rail, and we're gonna just fling it onwards. There we go. I'm just trying to find some suitable launch pad. Well, this one is not ideal because the hole is too small. No, this one is too big. Come on, give me something. I'm trying to find a launch pad that works. That's too big. Okay, that one feels like just right, you know, and I'm trying to put the launch pad that actually makes sense, which is not a complete and utter overkill. Just making sure that my staging is correct. I don't know if I'm gonna do anything additional with this test rail. I think the rail is enough. Alright, and we're getting ready for the launch. Let's kick it in the high gear and off we go. There we go. Rocket running straight and true, and we will be doing a bunch of deployments for the RemoteTech satellite network. The storm has finally cleared somewhat, so I don't expect any thunderstorms this time around. Hopefully everything will be, you know, dandy, and we will be able to launch things as intended originally. Now, the idea is that we should have we should go to initial orbit of 100 kilometers, and then we're gonna transition to 800 kilometers, 810-ish. Hopefully that should make 1-to-3 relation, where when we are orbiting, we should deploy the satellites so they end up in the perfect spot. Now, I haven't done exactly the math, and that's another thing that I would like to see from this RemoteTech calculator, if it could calculate for me the ideal transfer orbit. Let's say initial orbit 100 kilometers, and then, or maybe calculate the initial, you know, orbit. Let's say it should be between 90 and 120, and then the orbit which I should place the satellite to get this perfect triangle, depending on the number of satellites, maybe the perfect cube, maybe the perfect, you know, pentagon. It doesn't matter. That's what I'm trying to say. Maybe it would be an improvement, suggestion improvement for the tool. I find it really cool tool though, and I have to say, having the orbital period clearly defined is a huge help, as you will see later on in this episode. Now, the apoapsis did cross 75, and we are climbing, and we're shooting for 100-ish. I don't need it to be exactly spot on, because you will see a lot in my episodes. I tried to be a perfectionist and it nearly killed me, so it really doesn't make any sense to go 100% perfect. I'm gonna try as best as I can to keep it semi-ideal. Now, when we are going here, we have the Kerbal apoapsis, and see, this is one of the SETI mods. You see this yellow dots spotted around Kerbal. Those are the control ground station as added by the SETI mod. So that's another thing that I do want to make clear, that I wasn't aware that this is being added, because I don't read all the mods. I just thought, okay, it would be cool to play with such a mod mix. Okay, now I'm gonna be queuing the maneuver in the flight computer, and that's what I like to play. Flight computer, maneuver prograde, node, execute. I haven't yet ditched the fairing because I'm constantly paranoid. If I ditch the fairing, will it also decouple? I hope not, but you never know. So that's something that has changed. Previously I know I could just, you know, hit the spacebar and things would open. I haven't tested this, so yeah, I'm gonna probably test it once I have less things to lose. I still have 1,423 meters per second in this stage. So there we go. hitting the gas, and the computer is actually performing this maneuver, which is beautiful because it allows me to enjoy these views without thinking about when do I need to start, when do I need to stop. It's doing those things for me. Beautiful, right? Alright, and as you can tell, we are orbital. So now we have 397 meters per second. Now the plan is to kill the flight computer, turn the SAS on, and then I'm going to be planning the transfer maneuver. Now, I want to be deploying satellite and doing things mainly when I'm on the sunny side for your viewing pleasure, because there's no point of having the game dark and do everything in total darkness. It's bonkers, right? So I'm deploying this manually, and look how beautiful it deploys. Right. Extending the antenna and extending the solar panels for the deployer. If I did this for the satellites, probably there would be some repercussions because they would be intersecting one another and we would get a beautiful physics mishmash. Now, right, so I'm thinking now let's plan for the maneuver for deploying the satellites. We're going to do it somewhat at the apoapsis. We're going to do the burn, and I'm going to extend it to around 810. 810 has been suggested as an ideal orbit, height. So I'm just trying very carefully to adjust it using finer maneuver planners to get it to 810, 812, 11, it doesn't really matter. Right. Okay. There we go. And then we're gonna be queuing. And then we're gonna be queuing up the burn. Hold maneuver prograde and execute. Just making sure that the rocket is pointing, and the SAS is not particularly powerful, and that's why the rocket is flinging like a, like a noodle, if you will. Well, not exactly like a noodle, but more like I don't know, bamboo stick or something. Anyway, we're gonna accelerate time until we get to our burn, and then hopefully the burn will take care of it. And as you can tell, we are right now being connected to one of those ground stations. Like, ultimately it doesn't matter, because we would, in normal cases, we would have this thing queued up, and the only thing that could affect if we don't perform this is if we didn't have any electric charge. So the flight computer in RemoteTech is kind of the following thing. If you have control, then you can do stuff. You can send commands, but it will be executing those commands even if in the offline mode. So right now we are on the sunny side. Let's just disconnect. We really no longer need the Tundra Industries, Bagora rocket part. And now we have the small deployer, so I'm gonna be limiting thrust on this because I do want to fine-tune my orbit just by a smidge to ensure that we really get a little bit further away and that this piece of debris doesn't hit us back in the Carnegies. Now, time warp always helps in terms of getting those things further away from each other. Right, okay, I think that's even enough burn. Did you see any burn? No? I thought you wouldn't. Now, as I said, this local control, hopefully by the next episode it should get resolved. I'll still need to test things, but we'll see. Right, so time to start deploying the satellite. The first satellite is gonna get deployed from this side, and we're gonna just make sure that I extend its antenna. Activate, there we go. And then extend it, decouple, tunk. Now, this satellite is by no means the first, real relay network. This is actually, this is really just making sure that we have something. And then we're gonna perfect it over time, obviously. Right, so making sure that we prepare the maneuver node. Here we we go. Fine-tuning that it's 810 by 810, and then we're gonna be perfecting the... Right now I'm just making sure that the orbit is around what it should be, and after that we're gonna be securing that the orbital period is correct. So first the orbit itself, the apoapsis and periapsis, and then the orbital period. So fixing the orbit first. There we go, 812 by 812-ish. We're gonna make sure that we enjoy the visuals as we cued the maneuver, and it's now performing on its own. Just look at this beautiful screenshot. Should this be the title of the episode? Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm gonna look it up. Thumbnail for the episode material. Yes, please. Now the burn is quite long due to several factors. First, this is the end engine, and second, I'm gonna nerf its thrust down so that it can perform these fine tunings within like a tenth of the meter per second precision, because the lower thrust it is, the more precise it can execute maneuvers. And that's the case. So it's sorry for the little bit longer burn, and obviously guys, I'm not gonna be showing you all three in the same capacity. The idea is I show you how one of them is done, and then you're gonna see how I perform others. People who have been on my channel for a little bit longer will probably have a good idea how I tackle this. Now, thrust limiter is somewhat reduced. And by the way guys, if you have come all the way here, that means that you kind of maybe enjoy this content and you're actually liking what I'm doing. And if that's the case and you would like to be notified when more of these episodes come online, I would cordially ask you to, hit that subscribe button or do a like. Both of them help me equally and I appreciate it. So, look at this. Flight computer, orbital retrograde, and I am thrusting by a tiny margin to fix the old orbital period to be 1 hour, 32 minutes, and I think 495-ish seconds. So there we go, let's see, so it does take a little while because I was, 1:33.4951. I think that's good enough. We're gonna turn it orbit prograde, and I'm gonna reduce thrust to 1 for those finer adjustments. Now, there we go, and what do we do? Press it just ever so gently, 4975. Will that work? I think so. Right, so I'm gonna completely kill the engine here, put it back to 100%, but the engine is shut down so it doesn't accidentally fire. We're gonna set the target to be the active vessel for the directional antenna, and I'm gonna make sure that I rename the probe so that I rename the vessel. It's no longer service deployer, it's now called relay. Kerbal, so to identify the planetary body where it's located. SR stands for Short Range Relay number 1. And then it's going to be Short Range Relay. I can talk, I promise. 1, 2, and 3, and the 4 one will probably be back up. So, how do I tackle deployment of the other two? Greatly accelerated, of course, and showing you at the same time. I was doing the same thing. So basically the deployer did one loop around Kerbal, and then I was deploying the second one, which was the left one. And then another loop, and then I was deploying the second one, or the third one, which is the right one. Having said that, so both of them were going the same process, extending, making sure that they're in the correct orbit, and then matching the orbital period to the initial satellite once I can confirm that the satellite was in place. Now the transfer orbit was pretty decent, and all of them landed in the equal sides of the, I think it's what's called equilateral triangle. So I'm pretty happy with the place that they have ended. Otherwise I would need to do some orbital corrections. But that means that I basically just secured that they burned to the right spot, renamed them, and had them deployed. The one thing that where I did make a mistake, and remember I told you about the tool, it was counting that I would have commuted on 32s, which when calculated distance between those two satellites, any of those two satellites, is out of range, further down the range, when compared to the range of the Communotron 16. Meaning, everything I did, I messed up pretty royally. And with the ground stations now being removed, this network will be half functional. Where I plan to improve this is I do have one satellite that is in slanted orbit, so sort of in, let's say, 45-degree inclination orbit, and I plan to create a second one, because then the signal could in theory bounce between those two satellites and hopefully create some sort of redundancy. I told you, I'm not gonna do the perfect relay networks, but they're gonna be as well as I can make them. Once I get to the Communotron 32s, I'm probably gonna redeploy the communication network, and I'm gonna build these satellites to be a bit more robust. The people who have previously seen me play then remember that I had antenna for each planetary body. These small ones should have ultimately be, the first shell of relays around Kerbin, and the second one should be, a relay shell that secures the interplanetary communication or inter-system communication within the Kerbin system, meaning Kerbin, Moon, Minmus. And then comes the outer shell, which is sort of the interplanetary shell, which communicates to Duna, Dres, Moho, Jool, wherever. So that's why we're gonna be building the relay network in multiple shells. And that's how I want to tackle this issue. However, as I said, it's not perfect, but I need to unlock science to actually progress, and you have to balance it against having Communotron 32 for the good relay network, which is needed for the probe exploration, versus having more probes that are going out and exploring, versus having Kerbals that are gathering science from the other planetary bodies, like Moon and Minmus. Right. So, that's a pretty large mumbling block right there. Having said that, I'm thinking that it makes sense that we now put this into inclined orbit because all three satellites were deployed correctly, and that means that we can just, queue up this one and it will act as a second satellite. However, given the Communotron 16 ranges, how much it will be useful, I don't know. All I know is that if you place them in the different kinds of orbits, it might be a little bit more hectic, but it will also mean more antennas, more opportunities for the signal to get through. Quality through volume? Yes, you could say that, and as I said, I'm not perfectionist. Now, this one is experiencing a little bit of, booga booga dance. It's kind of, it's walking on sunshine. Yeah, whatever. Right, so I just flinched the engine a tiny bit because I'm gonna dispose of that thing later. However, this one has to burn on the dark side. However, its electric charge ran out, meaning it couldn't execute the maneuver. The moment Sun peaked its thing behind the Kerbin, then the electricity came back and then it was performing as intended. Now, this one ended up in an inclined larger, higher orbit, and it's gonna be like there. So, return of the main craft deployer, I was thinking I'm gonna try and do propulsive landing if I will be able to, and I was hoping that by decreasing I cannot fold in the solar panels, just so you know, those are not foldable, and antenna I could fold in, but why? So, I was trying to do the propulsive landing where I decreased the velocity by how much I could. So, but it still burnt out the solar panels. Still, we have plenty of electric charge in our batteries. That's not such a biggie. And we are waiting until this craft starts falling at its terminal velocity of around 233. And I do have the suicide burn distance, and I don't think I have enough power, but I was hoping to get. And then we come to today's special. Yay! KSP physics. This is how you actually launch this tiny piece without any delta V whatsoever. Yeah, you just dunk it into water and it flies off. Hope you liked today's episode. Fling a like if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.